Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more slug testing. And today, we've got a really interesting loading to test out here. And it's one that I'm definitely excited to see what kind of results we get, because I have a feeling that this might just be one of the worst shells that you can go out and buy. Hey, maybe it surprises us, but I have my serious doubts coming into it. I always hope these prove me wrong, but this might just be comically bad for performance today. I don't know. But as for the ammo we have out here today, I picked up some of these. These are some Sterling Tornado slugs. They are a 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch shell. It doesn't say here on the box, but these are a 1 ounce slug, moving about 1460, I believe is the claim. And these are some very weirdly loaded shells, to say the least. As you can see here on the box, they are these weird spiral, like fluted type of slugs. So definitely a very interesting design there. But what really gets me is here's the actual shell, and we'll show some close-ups and stuff of this as we go through and talk about it here. But these slugs are technically a sabot slug. They are loaded in a like field wad or a skeet wad type of deal, not an actual sabot. So definitely an interesting concept, that's for sure, and one that I don't know how well it's actually gonna work out for us. And if you really want to get a more in-depth look and more details and more testing and stuff on these actual slugs, the guys over at the Shotgun Scientist have done a few videos on these with some very interesting results and some very good information. So I highly recommend going over to check them out and those videos, because we're gonna kind of test some of the things that they did and see what kind of results that I can get out of them, that's for sure. But as for the test today, we're gonna do it a little differently than what we normally do. Typically, I have a target set up at 50 yards and 100 yards, and we shoot groups and see how accurate things are and stuff like that. But if you know anything about these slugs or have seen them before, they might just be the least accurate slugs ever made. I don't know. So I've got the turkey range set up behind me. It's 40 yards. I've got the big giant sheet of paper down there, as well as the chronograph, and we're going to take a few shots through some different setups at this big sheet of paper and just see what kind of accuracy we're able to get. If it really surprises us and it looks good, then we'll step it out to a little longer range, but I highly doubt it. But as for those setups that we're going to run it through, first up, I brought out the Remington 870 Special Purpose with the 18.5 inch fully rifled cantilever barrel on it. Up on top is a Leupold VX1 2 to 7 by 28. And since these, technically speaking, are a sabot slug, even though it's more of just a field wad than anything else, we're going to run them through a rifled barrel here and see what happens, I suppose. And then after that, continuing to test it, I also brought out my Remington 1187 here, and I have the stock full choke in the gun, which typically for slugs, I wouldn't necessarily start with a full choke. However, these are an undersized slug. They are, I believe, a 670 diameter. So even this full choke, they're still going to be a little bit undersized going through it. So maybe that might help the accuracy out some. I don't know. We'll see what happens. And then just for fun, I also have a Carlson's rifled choke for that 1187 that we can throw in and test. So based on the other results we see, we'll throw this rifled choke in that 1187 and just see what kind of a difference that makes. So enough talking, let's go over here and get set up and start taking groups here and just see what kind of wild accuracy we're going to get out of these. I hope it surprises us, but we might not even hit the paper with all of these shells, that's for sure. But let's go over here and start with this 870 rifled barrel and see what we get. Okay, so let's go through our 3 velocities real quick out of this 18.5 inch rifled barrel. Shell number 1 gave us 1332, shell number 2 was 1396, and shell number 3 was 1367. That gave us an average of 1365 feet per second out of this 18.5 inch barrel. So if 1460 is the claim, that's not too bad for being this short of a barrel. It's still a little bit slower than a lot of your typical rifled slugs, but not too bad, I wouldn't say. But let's go take a quick look at our accuracy and see how the rifled barrel actually did. Okay, so our three-shot group out of the fully rifled barrel gave us these three holes, and it's definitely not good, that's for sure, but it's honestly better than what I expected it to be. It measured out to be right at a 13.5-inch group. It definitely isn't great, that's for sure. At 50 yards, 13.5 inches is terrible, but it's better than I expected to see. I did mark these holes with X's so we can differentiate our holes. So let's run three more through the 1187 with the full choke and just see what kind of results we get out of that combo. Okay, I apologize. It doesn't look like the camera decided to record that group on the actual target, but we'll take a look at the results here in a second. But let's take a look at our chronograph numbers. I do apologize for the battery light blinking, but we can still see what we need. Obviously, shell number one gave us 1,432 through that 1187 with the full choke. Shell number two gave us 1,362 feet per second, and shell number three was up at 1,426. So that gave us an average at 1,406 feet per second. Still a little bit below their claim, but 1,400 feet per second is definitely faster than the 18.5-inch barrel. But what kind of a result did we actually get down at 40 yards? Let's go check it out and see what we got. All right, so let's take a look here at what that 1187 was actually able to do with the stock full choke. And these three holes up here that are circled are our three shots. Again, I apologize. I don't know why the actual target camera didn't record. Now, surprisingly enough, that gave us a 5.75-inch group, 5 3/4 inches at 40 yards. Still, that is not a great group. However, that is far and away better than anything I was expecting to see based on other people's testing that I've already seen from these. However, what I am seeing is, you can probably see it as well through the camera, those holes are straight up ovals. Those shells are not even remotely flying stable, which really surprises me considering what we had seen out of that rifled barrel. Those holes look pretty much straight on. And if those are tumbling or yawing going down range out of that 1187, I am really surprised we saw it as decent of accuracy as we actually did here. Granted, it's still not good. So definitely pretty surprising so far. Still pretty bad, but it's way better than what I was expecting to see. So I'm curious now, if we go up and throw that rifle choke in the 1187, we saw better accuracy from it, but we saw better stability from the rifled barrel. Is that going to be a happy medium? Let's head up here and take three shots with that combo and see what we're able to get. Okay, let's take a quick look at the velocities through that rifle choke and see what we got. Obviously, shell number one was 1,404 feet per second. Shell number two was at 1,449 feet per second. And shell number three was at 1,389 feet per second. That gave us an average at 1,414 feet per second. Still under the supposed claim of 1,460, but at the very least, I guess they seem somewhat consistent, if nothing else, as far as velocity goes. But what kind of group did we get out of that rifle choke? Let's go down and take a look and see what we got. All right, well, what did we get out of the rifled choke in the 1187? That would be these three holes over here that are not marked with anything, the two over on the left and the one in the white dot. As you can see, they are still oblong looking. They might be a touch better than the standard 1187 with the full choke over there, but the rifle choke doesn't really seem to have made much of a difference, if anything at all. And as for a spread, we had right at 6 inches. So 1/4 of an inch, roughly, difference between just the full choke and the rifle choke. I don't think it's really any conclusive difference between the two, to be honest with you. Now, I will say here, I have seen some terrible, terrible results with these slugs before, and granted, these results are not good. Remember, this is 40 yards, and the smallest group we saw was 5 3/4 inches. If you were to move that out to 100 yards, you would be like 12, 13-inch group, which is terrible. And that's if they actually are stable and fly consistently. But I gotta say, out of my particular setups, I'm rather surprised to see this decent of a result. I was expecting to have maybe half of these slugs actually hit the paper, but I guess for what they are, it would be good enough for something like a home defense scenario or something. And I don't know, maybe a 25 or 30 yard coyote or something like that if you needed them to. They're still not great, don't get me wrong, but they're better than what I was expecting to see coming into it, at least through my particular setups. So I guess take it for what it's worth. Whatever you guys feel about it, if it's decent enough, if it's absolutely terrible, I think it can really go either way on this one based on your opinion about it, that's for sure. Okay, and here is what's left of the wad thing that they use. It is literally just like a Target style wad. As you can see, you have the big gas cushion piece. This is the pedals that is supposed to be molded onto here and folded up the other direction. It didn't matter whether it was a rifled barrel, rifled choke, or a full choke. Every last one of them looks like this. They're just in pieces all over the range here. Granted, this is not what you're supposed to use for a slug anyway, but even if it could have been used, it didn't do any good for them, I don't think. So is it the wad that's messing them up? Is it just the slugs themselves being terrible and not aerodynamic the proper way or something like that? I don't know, but the wad, supposed Sabo type of design they have, clearly is not working because every last one of them is in pieces all over my range just like this. All right, well, what do you guys think about those results? Clearly, I think we can pretty well all agree that at 40 yards, slugs should be within 2 inches or so at maximum. You should be grouping them within your fist size at that kind of range, at least. And these are very clearly not even close to that. Now, granted, if you have seen other people's testing with these, you probably already know that these are not great slugs. But I will be honest, that is a lot better than anything I was expecting to see coming into this. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Is that about what you expected? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? You have any experience with these Sterling slugs, whether it be the tornado slugs or the big game slugs or anything like that? And sneak peek, I do have some of the big game Sterlings as well that we're going to test, so we'll see how those do as well. Either way, what do you guys think about it? Is it just a way over designed, too complicated of a load? They should just make it a typical rifled style slug and leave it at that? Or do you think that loading can work through some magical combination? Let me know all that down below. But as for today's results, again, they're not great. They're not good, that's for sure. I wouldn't trust them on any kind of actual animal. Maybe a plinking target style slug, sure, but actual hunting scenarios, no, not for me. But I guess it wasn't a complete failure because we saw better results than what I was expecting to see coming into it. So I guess we can take it for what it is, and you guys can come up with your own opinion about it. But with that being said, I've got plenty more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.